On a cold, rain-dark river, a fisherman quietly pulls a sealed styrofoam box onto his boat. And the first thing he does isn't call for help. He looks over his shoulder. He drifts into the reeds. He reaches for a knife. The lid is zip-tied shut, tight, like someone wanted whatever was inside to disappear. And when he finally cracks it open, a golden retriever mother and two tiny puppies are shaking so badly they can barely lift their heads. So let me ask you, if you saw a man hide a box, pull out a blade, and open it in secret, what would you think he was about to do? Stay with me, because the truth behind that box is not what it looks like. And if stories like this mean something to you, we're trying to grow this little corner into the next 1,000 subscribers, no pressure. But if you'd like to be one of them, I'd be grateful to have you with us. Winter on the southern river brought no snow, only cold rain and fog so thick it swallowed sound. Eli Carter steered his aluminum skiff along the reed line. He was 38, lean and long-limbed, with a narrow, angular face and a short, dark beard that made him look older than he was. A faded knit cap hid most of his dark hair, but damp curls escaped at the edges. His hazel eyes stayed alert in the mist, the way they had since the day the river took someone he loved and left him to explain the empty space. His left wrist carried a pale rope burn that never fully faded. He wore it like a reminder, not a story. Since that day, Eli moved through the world with careful, quiet patience, polite but distant, as if every attachment came with a price. He told himself he came out here because fish still paid bills. Out on the water, no one asked questions, and he didn't have to pretend he was fine. The motor idled low as he checked his first set of traps. Fog beaded on his eyelashes. He listened for the clink of chain and the slap of water against the hull. Then came a different sound, hollow, plastic, repetitive. Knock, knock, knock. Eli straightened and squinted into the white-gray blur. A rectangular shadow bumped a dock post, spun, then drifted back again, caught in an argument with the current. He eased the skiff closer, pulse rising for no good reason. A styrofoam cooler. It looked dragged through mud. Brown streaks smeared the sides. River scum clung to the seams. Two white plastic zip ties cinched the lid tight, biting into the foam so hard the edges were dented. Eli's throat tightened. Trash floated past his boat every week, but nobody zip-tied a cooler shut unless they were hiding something or keeping something from escaping. He killed the motor and let the skiff glide. With the boat hook, he snagged the handle and drew the cooler to the hull. The river tugged, impatient. The box bumped his boat. From inside, a sound leaked through the lid seam, a whine thin, broken, barely there. Eli crouched, face close to the lid. The zip ties were new, clean, almost bright against the dirty foam. He pressed his fingers along the crack where the lid didn't sit perfectly flush. Cold air slid out. Warmer air pushed back. Something alive. Another whine. Then frantic scratching tiny claws skittering against plastic. Eli's hand went to his pocket knife. He should cut the ties. Now. Before the river carried the box into the bend. Before it slammed against rocks. A low growl vibrated up through the foam, weak but unmistakable. Not anger, fear trying to look like protection. Eli forced his voice calm. "Hey," he said, "easy. I'm not going to hurt you. He tilted his face to the gap. Two golden brown eyes stared back. A dog female, cream-colored fur matted into wet spikes, ears flattened tight to her head. Even in the dimness, Eli could tell she was a golden retriever, or close enough. Broad forehead, soft muzzle, the kind of face people trusted. But her expression was sharp with panic. She trembled so hard her breath fogged the crack, and her gaze stayed locked on Eli like he was both danger and the last chance. Behind her, two smaller shapes pressed into her ribs. Puppies. They were tiny, maybe 6 or 7 weeks old, coats the color of pale honey, soaked dark along their bellies. One puppy tried to lift its head and failed, wobbling and sinking back down. The other shivered in hard jerks, mouth opening in a soundless cry. The mother shifted immediately, angling her body to block Eli's view. She lifted her lip just enough to show teeth she probably didn't want to use. Eli's stomach turned. He pictured hands shoving them in, slamming the lid, cinching the ties, then walking away. The mother dog's eyes flicked toward the fog as if she heard something he hadn't. The puppies squeaked softly. Eli glanced down at the lid. Thick black marker had been scrawled across it. Rain had smeared the ink, but the first word was readable. Not. The rest disappeared under grime. Not yours, not worth it, not my problem. His fingers tightened around the knife handle in his pocket. He imagined cutting the ties, lifting the lid, and the mother lunging in panic. He could take a bite. What he couldn't take was hesitating while the current stole time. He shifted the cooler so it rested against the skiff's side, steadying it. "I've got you," he whispered, and the promise sounded reckless the moment it left his mouth. The mother dog inched her nose toward the crack, sniffing. She didn't trust him, but she was listening, and that felt like a thin thread. Eli started to draw the knife. A new sound rolled over the water, an engine, higher and faster than his. At first it was distant, easy to doubt. Then it sharpened, purposeful, cutting through the rain. Eli froze. The engine came from downstream, from the bend where the fog thickened. A searchlight flickered faintly, a narrow white beam sweeping low across the river like an eye hunting for something hidden. Eli's pulse hammered. In fog, distance lied. The mother dog went rigid, ears twitching, though they stayed pinned. One puppy tucked its face deeper under her chest. The other pawed weakly at her leg, begging without words. Eli's mind raced. If someone dumped this box, why would they be on the river now? Unless they were checking, unless they followed the current, unless they planned to retrieve it or make sure nobody else did. He slid the knife back into his pocket, not because he wanted to wait, but because an open cooler would look like proof from a distance. Proof someone might not want seen. He angled the skiff into the reeds and lowered his shoulders, making himself small. One hand stayed on the cooler handle, anchoring it. The other rested on the gunnel, trying to look casual, like a man untangling line. The searchlight swept again, brighter. For a heartbeat, it painted the wet hull silver and lit the cooler's filthy lid. Eli held his breath. The mother dog pressed her head against the crack and let out a strangled sound. Eli's eyes stung. He hated how his body wanted to choose safety. He remembered the last time he'd been too careful and how that caution had turned into regret. He squeezed the cooler handle until his fingers ached. "Hold on," he breathed. The engine revved. A bow wave rippled through the foggy water. The beam slid toward him again, slow and searching. Eli had seconds. He could shove the cooler deeper into the reeds and follow it, letting the brush hide them, praying the bigger boat wouldn't care enough to pursue. Or he could stay where he was and face whoever rounded the bend, hoping his stillness looked innocent enough to protect 3 lives trapped under foam. Eli drew one careful breath, tasting cold metal in the air, and made his choice. The searchlight slid away, and the river exhaled into darkness. Eli kept his skiff wedged in the reeds, shoulders tight, listening until the other engine faded into nothing but rain. Only then did he move. He didn't start his motor. In fog, sound carried in strange, sharp ways. He used the paddle, pushing slow and steady, letting the current hide him. The styrofoam cooler bumped his hull, stubborn as a secret. Eli hooked the plastic handle with his boat hook and pinned the box against the bench with his knee. From the lid seam came a thin whine. Eli's fingers closed around his pocket knife. Opening the lid meant more than rescue. It meant witnesses, questions, consequences. He pictured the beam sweeping back. He pictured someone deciding the easiest way to erase a mistake was to erase the man who found it. "Hang on," he whispered toward the crack. He paddled into a narrow back channel where cypress knees rose from the black water. Here the fog thickened and the shoreline felt close. Eli angled the skiff until it kissed mud with a soft suck. He jumped out, boots sinking, and dragged the cooler onto the bank. 2 white zip ties cinched the lid tight, bright against the stained foam. Whoever did this hadn't been careless. They'd been deliberate. Eli cut the first tie. Snap. Too loud. He froze, head tilted, waiting for an engine that didn't come. He cut the second and lifted the lid a cautious inch. 2 amber eyes stared back at him. A golden retriever, mother 3, maybe 4 years old, pressed herself over her puppies, cream coat soaked into spikes, ribs faint beneath wet fur. Her ears were flattened, her body shaking so hard the whole cooler trembled with her. She tried a warning growl, but it cracked into something weak and pleading. Behind her, 2 puppies were curled into a tight knot, barely bigger than Eli's hands. Their coats were pale gold, darker where river water had soaked them. One had a small smudge of darker fur along one ear. The other's nose was pink from cold, dotted with grit. They didn't bark. They only shivered tiny bodies, jerking like they were trying to remember warmth. Eli swallowed. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said, keeping his hands low. "I'm getting you out." The mother's gaze flicked to the fog, then back to him, as if danger could return at any second. Eli reached into his skiff and pulled out a clean plastic tote he used for bait and spare rope. He lined it with a dry towel, then with his own rain jacket, giving up his last layer without thinking. He moved slowly, narrating each motion. The mother dog tracked his hands, tense, ready to lunge, but she stayed. He scooped the puppies first, one and then the other, cradling them against his chest for a heartbeat just to feel they were alive. They were shockingly light. One let out a faint squeak and pushed its muzzle into the fold of his shirt. Eli set them into the tote and covered them halfway, leaving space for air. The mother surged forward, then stopped. She didn't care about Eli. She cared about where her babies went. She climbed out, paws slipping on wet foam, and planted herself beside the tote, head lowered, breathing fast. Eli expected her to bolt. Instead, she pressed her nose to each puppy, counting, nudging, confirming. 1, 2, safe. Eli carried the tote back to the skiff, then to his truck at a small gravel pull-off. He set the tote on the passenger floorboard so warm air could pour down around them. The mother climbed in after, stiff and wary, then curled around the puppies like a shield made of shaking bones. Eli drove with both hands locked on the wheel, eyes hard on the wet road, fog clinging to the windshield. Every mile felt stolen. He kept checking the mirror, half expecting headlights, someone reclaiming what they'd discarded. His cabin appeared small, wooden, close to the water, porch light dim and steady. Eli carried the tote inside, boots thudding on old boards, and fed logs into the iron stove until flame caught. He knelt, looked at the 2 puppies tucked against their mother, and chose names that sounded like luck. Clover for the one with the dark ear smudge, Nugget for the smaller one with the pink nose. Dr. Harper was the town's night owl vet, mid-40s, freckled, auburn hair clipped short, voice like steady hands. She'd patched fishermen, strays, and storm victims without judgment. If anyone could keep them alive, it was her, right now, tonight, please. He stared at the lid, breathing hard. Then, with shaking fingers, Eli picked up his phone and called Dr. Harper. Dr. Harper arrived with rain in her hair and calm in her hands. She was in her mid-40s, freckled across the nose, with auburn hair clipped close so it never fell into her eyes. Her jacket smelled faintly of antiseptic and wet dog, the scent of a person who worked nights because animals didn't get sick on schedule. She didn't offer big feelings. She offered competence, and it felt like mercy. Eli held the tote steady while Honey watched from the rim like a sentry. The mother's cream coat was still soaked, fur clumped along her shoulders. She trembled, but her gaze stayed sharp, tracking every move. Clover lay pressed to Honey's belly, breathing too fast, too shallow. Nugget tucked in tighter, the smaller body shivering in quick bursts. Hypothermia and dehydration, Dr. Harper said, fingers light at Clover's chest. Not the worst I've seen, but close enough. She listened with her stethoscope, then looked up at Eli. You did the right thing. No hot bath. Slow heat. Steady. Eli nodded, throat tight. Dr. Harper wrapped the puppies in warmed towels, showed Eli how to angle the stove's heat without baking them, and mixed a small syringe of electrolyte solution. Honey's lip lifted when the syringe came near. Dr. Harper didn't flinch. She lowered her voice, soft but firm. Hey, Mama, I'm not your enemy. Honey's eyes flicked to Eli, then back. She allowed it, barely just enough for Clover to swallow a few drops before coughing. Her whole body shook with raw exhaustion. Clover's lungs sound tight, Dr. Harper warned. Watch her all night. If she gums up or goes limp, you call me. No waiting. Her gaze sharpened, as if she'd seen too many people hope a problem would fix itself. And feed Mom small amounts. She's underweight, Eli promised, and hated how much he needed the promise to mean something. When Dr. Harper left, the cabin settled into stove crackle quiet. Eli dozed in a chair, boots still on, waking every time Clover's breathing hitched. Honey never truly rested. She stared at the window as if the fog outside held a shape she recognized. At dawn, the rain softened to mist. Honey rose, paced, then scraped her nails against the floorboards. 3 quick strokes, then a pause. She looked at Eli and huffed, urgent. "You want out?" Eli asked. Honey didn't go to the door for a bathroom break. She went to the door like it was a direction. Eli pulled on his jacket, dread and duty tangling together. He told himself he was only checking the river, but when Honey trotted ahead, head low, tail tucked, he followed the truth instead of the excuse. She led him to the old riprap bank where the current slowed. Her paws stopped at a patch of mud near a half-collapsed concrete step. Honey sniffed, then pawed once, hard, like she was digging up a memory. Eli crouched. In the mud lay a strip of industrial packing tape, gray and thick, the kind used on heavy boxes. It was torn at the end, smeared with river grit. Nearby, reeds were flattened in a straight line, as if something large had been dragged through them. Eli traced the groove with 2 fingers and felt his stomach drop. A cooler didn't walk itself to the water. He scanned the ground, a partial boot print, heel deep. A faint track from a small handcart. Too many small signs pointing the same way. Honey watched him, eyes wide, then looked back toward the trees as if expecting someone to step out. Back at the cabin, Eli posted on the Bayou Bend community board. He kept it simple. Found a golden retriever mom and 2 pups adrift in a tide cooler. Safe now, looking for information. He didn't add his address. He didn't mention the inlet. Replies came fast, helpful ones, and ugly ones. "How do we know you didn't do it? Call animal control. This is sketchy." Eli's jaw tightened. He'd expected kindness, and the expectation itself made him feel stupid. His phone rang from a blocked number. He answered anyway. "Hello?" A man's voice, low and tired, like smoke. "You found something on the river." Eli's skin went cold. "Who is this?" "Doesn't matter." The voice stayed flat. "You're making noise. Stop." Eli's hand clenched around the phone. "Those dogs, not your problem," the man cut in. "Walk away, or you'll regret being curious." The line went dead. Eli stood in his kitchen with the stove humming behind him, phone still pressed to his ear, and finally understood what Honey had been trying to say. She hadn't drifted into his life by accident. Someone had put her on the river, then come back to make sure she stayed gone. Clover's fever came on fast, the kind that turned a small body into something fragile and frightening. Eli noticed it at dusk, when the cabin should have felt safer. Stove warm, towels dry, the rain finally easing into a thin drizzle. Instead, Clover lay limp against Honey's belly, eyes half-lidded, her breath too quick for sleep. Eli pressed 2 fingers to her side and felt the heat. Not the gentle warmth of recovery. This was wrong. This was a fire in a body that didn't have fuel to spare. He called Dr. Harper before he could talk himself out of sounding afraid. She arrived with her medical bag and a knit beanie pulled low, cheeks pink from the cold damp. Under the bright kitchen light, she looked more tired than yesterday, but her hands stayed steady. Dr. Harper's freckled face tightened as she took Clover's temperature, then listened at her chest. "River water," she said quietly. "Likely infection, maybe aspiration, maybe bacteria from whatever was in that cooler." She glanced at Eli, measuring how much truth he could hold. "This can go bad quickly." Eli swallowed. "What do we do?" "We treat hard and we treat now," she said. "Antibiotics, fluids, monitoring." She wrote on a small pad, quick strokes. "I can start her here tonight, but she needs a full check at my clinic in the morning. X-rays if she worsens." Eli stared at the paper, as if numbers might rearrange themselves into something easier. He lived season to season. A bad week of fishing meant late bills. Vet care was a wall he'd been lucky not to hit before. Dr. Harper saw it in his face. She softened her voice without softening the facts. Eli, don't wait because of money. Not with a puppy this small. He looked down at Clover's tiny chest, rising, falling, rising too fast. His jaw clenched. I won't. Word travels in a town like Bayou Bend, the way fog travels over water, quiet, unstoppable. By morning, people knew there were dogs in Eli's cabin. Some came because they were kind. Some came because they were curious. Some came because small towns collect stories like jars collect rain. The first knock was gentle. Eli opened the door to a woman in her late 60s holding a folded quilt. She was short and sturdy, skin browned by sun and years, hair silver and pinned into a neat bun. Her name was Marlene Doss, and everyone on the river knew her as the woman who fed stray cats behind the diner and scolded grown men like they were 12. I heard you found a mama and babies, Marlene said, eyes soft but sharp. You look like you haven't slept in a decade. She pushed the quilt into his hands before he could refuse. Put this under them. Real cotton. Holds heat better. Behind her, a teenage boy hovered with a paper bag of canned puppy food. He was lanky, freckles scattered across his nose, hoodie sleeves too long for his wrists. His name was Tyler Ruiz, a kid who worked weekends at the bait shop and talked with his eyes down like the world had taught him not to take up space. My mom said, "You might need this," Tyler mumbled, offering the bag like it was a confession. Eli thanked them both, throat thick. He didn't know how to hold gratitude without feeling indebted. He'd spent too long believing help came with strings. More people came. Someone leaving a 20 on the porch rail. Someone else dropping off a bag of wood pellets. Small town America, Dr. Harper would have called it. The quiet network that appeared when the official systems moved too slow. Then, just after noon, a dark pickup rolled into Eli's yard. It wasn't the kind of truck you didn't notice. Black paint, clean enough to reflect the gray sky. Tires too new for river mud. The engine idled with a confident rumble like it expected doors to open for it. A man stepped out and shut the door with measured force. He was mid-40s, broad-shouldered, built like someone who wanted to take up room. His hair was cut short at the sides, the top combed back, dark with a few strands of gray. A trimmed beard framed his jaw, making his face look carved sharp cheekbones, narrow eyes that didn't blink much. He wore a heavy canvas jacket that looked expensive, but deliberately plain. He walked up the porch like he owned the steps. Eli met him at the door. "Can I help you?" The man's gaze flicked past Eli's shoulder, scanning the interior with quick, practiced hunger. "Name's Derek Harlan," he said. His voice was smooth, almost polite, like a salesman who'd learned manners to hide teeth. "I'm here about my dogs." Eli's pulse spiked. "Your dogs?" Derek nodded once. "Golden Retriever female. 2 pups. I heard you picked them up." Behind Eli, a faint scrape of claws. Honey had risen without a sound. Her ears flattened, and she backed into the corner near the stove, pressing herself against the tote where Clover and Nugget lay. Her whole body trembled, as if the air had turned to ice. Eli felt it like a warning bell in his ribs. "They were drifting in a cooler," Eli said carefully, "zip-tied shut." Derek's mouth tightened for half a second, then smoothed. Accidents happen. Storm, kids messing around. Who knows? Either way, you've done your part. I'm here to take them home. Honey let out a low, broken sound. Not a growl, not a bark. Fear, pure, unmistakable. Eli held the door frame, grounding himself. If they're yours, you'll have paperwork, vet records, photos, something. Derek's eyes narrowed. You accusing me? I'm asking, Eli said. His voice surprised him with how steady it sounded. Because the mother looks terrified of you. Derek took one step closer, boots heavy on porch boards. That dog is skittish, always has been. Now I'm going to be patient because you're doing a good deed, but you're holding my property. If you don't hand them over, I can make this difficult. Eli felt the old instinct to retreat, keep peace, avoid conflict. The river had taught him what happens when you hesitate. He looked at Honey, shaking in the corner, eyes pinned on Derek like he was the dark part of a memory. No, Eli said. Derek blinked, like the word didn't belong here. Excuse me? No, Eli repeated, not without proof. And Clover's sick. She's under a vet's care. As if summoned by the sentence, a car door slammed outside. Dr. Harper stepped onto the porch, raincoat unbuttoned, eyes immediately taking in the scene. Her posture changed in a way Eli recognized, calm, turning to steel. What's going on? She asked, voice flat. Derek turned, smile appearing like a mask. Doc, great timing. Tell him to do the right thing. Those are my dogs. Dr. Harper looked from Derek to Honey's trembling body, then back. If they're yours, she said, you can show me records, microchip numbers, anything. Derek's smile twitched. I don't have to show you anything. Dr. Harper's eyes hardened. Then you don't get to take them. The air on the porch felt charged, as if the whole town's quiet kindness had run into something sharp and dangerous. Eli could feel his heartbeat in his fingertips. Derek's gaze returned to Eli, and the warmth in it was gone. This isn't over, Derek said softly, and for the first time, his voice sounded like the threat it had been all along. By evening, the rain had changed its mind from drizzle to punishment. It fell in heavy sheets that slapped the river flat and turned the yard into a slick, sucking mess. The air held that southern winter bite-no snow, just cold that crawled up through your shoes and sat in your bones. Eli kept the stove fed and the puppies close, but his nerves wouldn't settle. Derek's threat still echoed in the corners of the cabin, and the blocked number warning from yesterday felt less like paranoia now and more like a countdown. Honey had been quieter since Derek left, but it wasn't peace. It was vigilance sharpened to a point. She stayed near the tote, head low, watching the windows like they were doors that could open from the outside. Clover's fever had eased after Dr. Harper's first doses, but she was still fragile, breathing unevenly, belly rising too fast. Nugget slept in short bursts, jerking awake whenever the wind rattled the porch rail. Eli was wiping the counter when Honey suddenly froze. Her ears went flat, her nose lifted. She inhaled once, deep, like she'd tasted something on the air that didn't belong in this house. Then she moved. Not a casual trot. A bolt. Honey shot through the kitchen, nails skidding on the wood floor, and slammed her shoulder into the door hard enough to make it shudder. She whined one sharp sound and looked back at Eli with eyes so urgent they didn't feel like an animal's instinct. They felt like a message. Eli's pulse spiked. "Honey, no, Clover." Honey hit the door again, frantic but controlled, like she'd been holding this back and could no longer afford to. Eli glanced at the tote. Clover and Nugget were bundled in warm towels. Leaving them felt wrong, but the way Honey's whole body trembled with recognition felt worse. He grabbed his raincoat and a flashlight, then called Dr. Harper. It went to voicemail. He didn't leave a message. He didn't have time. Eli shoved the door open, and the rain hit him like a slap. Honey sprinted into the yard, then stopped at the river path and waited, glancing back to make sure he followed. The river was swollen, dark and loud, chewing at its banks. Eli's boots sank into mud with every step. The flashlight beam bounced across wet reeds and the slick shine of standing water. Honey led him along the shoreline, moving fast but not reckless, as if she knew exactly where to go. Eli's mind raced through possibilities. Derek, the warehouse by the old landing, that searchlight on the river, too many threads pulling in one direction. Ahead, through curtains of rain, a faint glow pulsed between the trees. Lights. Eli slowed, heart hammering, and killed his flashlight. Honey crouched instinctively, body low, and crept forward with a silence that didn't match her exhaustion. Eli followed, breath held, until the trees thinned and the view opened. The abandoned warehouse sat near the river bend like a rotting tooth-corrugated metal walls streaked with rust, a sagging loading dock, weeds taller than a man in places. It should have been dead. Instead, it was alive with motion. A truck idled near the dock, headlights off, but work lights hung on a tripod cast harsh white pools across the mud. Several figures moved in those pools, silhouettes in rain slickers, hauling something heavy from inside. Cages, metal crates, the kind used for transporting animals, covered with tarps that clung and fluttered in the wind. Each time a tarp shifted, Eli caught a glimpse of bars and dark shapes pressed behind them. A sound rose over the rain-muffled whining. Eli's stomach turned. Honey's breath came in fast bursts beside him. Her tail was tucked, but her body leaned forward, trembling with rage and fear braided together. She knew this place. She had been here, or close enough to smell it in her nightmares. Eli reached for his phone, screen dimmed under his palm. He angled it toward the truck, trying to capture a plate number through the rain. His hands were slick, fingers numb. He tapped record. A man stepped into the light. Tall, wiry, shoulders hunched against the rain, face hidden by a hood. He turned just enough for the light to catch his jaw, sharp, stubbled, impatient. He barked something at the others, and they moved faster. Eli crouched lower. His mind screamed to leave, to call the police from a safe distance. But he thought of the cooler, the zip ties, the puppies' shaking bodies. This was the source. Honey shifted suddenly, a low growl vibrating in her chest. Not loud, just enough. One of the men paused. His head turned toward the tree line. Eli's blood went cold. He tightened his grip on Honey's collar. There wasn't one, only wet fur. He whispered, "Easy, please." The man stared into the darkness, then lifted his flashlight and swept it across the trees. The beam caught Eli's boot. White light exploded across mud and fabric. For a split second, time stopped, and Eli saw the man's eyes widen. "Hey!" the man shouted. Honey lunged, not at the man, but away, dragging Eli sideways. Eli stumbled, phone still recording, and the camera swung wildly. He heard footsteps pounding off the dock. Eli ran. Rain turned the path into a slide. His boots skidded. The flashlight bounced in his fist. Behind him, men shouted short, angry bursts that carried even through the storm. Honey led him hard right, off the path, into reeds and standing water. Eli's legs burned. The river roar grew louder, too close. The ground dropped under his foot, and he nearly went down. Honey jerked back, bracing, teeth gripping his sleeve for a heartbeat, pulling him away from the edge. Black water surged where the bank had collapsed, a hungry mouth in the dark. Eli's heart slammed against his ribs. One more step, and he would have gone in. They crouched behind a fallen cypress trunk, slick with rain. Eli forced his breathing silent, phone clutched tight to his chest. The screen showed a smear of light and motion, then, for one clear second, the truck's rear as it pivoted. A plate. Not perfectly sharp, but legible enough to matter. Footsteps splashed nearby. A flashlight beam swept, slicing across reeds. Honey trembled against Eli's side, eyes fixed, silent, vibrating with everything she couldn't say. Eli held his breath until his lungs screamed. The beam moved on. Then the engine revved. Through the trees, the truck's headlights flared to life, blasting the riverbank in white glare. The vehicle turned, tires spitting mud, and for a heartbeat, the beams pinned Eli where he crouched, caught him like an animal in a spotlight. Eli stared back into the light, rain streaming down his face, and understood with sick clarity he hadn't just found a crime. He'd been seen. Eli didn't remember the drive back from the river. He only remembered the taste of rain on his lips and the way the truck's headlights had pinned him like a confession. By the time he reached his cabin, his hands were still shaking, not from cold, but from the certainty that someone had seen his face. Honey stayed close as he slid inside, soaking wet, breath ragged. She paced once, then went straight to the tote where Clover and Nugget slept in a knot of towels. Her body hovered over them, protective, trembling in quiet aftershocks. Eli locked the door. Then he locked it again, as if a second click could rewrite what had happened. He watched Clover's chest rise, still fast, but steadier than yesterday. Nugget's tiny paws twitched in sleep. Those small movements anchored Eli in the only reality that mattered. They were alive, and someone had tried to make sure they wouldn't be. He plugged his phone into the charger with fumbling fingers and scrolled through the video. The footage was ugly rain blurred, shaking, half darkness. But there was a moment right before the headlights flared where the truck pivoted and the plate caught the light like a flash of truth. Eli stared until his eyes burned. Then he called Dr. Harper. She answered on the second ring, voice thick with sleep but sharpened by urgency the instant she heard his breathing. "Eli, I have proof," he said. "They saw me. I need you." 20 minutes later, Dr. Harper stood in his kitchen again, hair damp, coat thrown over pajamas. In the yellow stove light, her freckles stood out like storm spray. She didn't ask for a story first. She asked for the phone. Eli played the clip. Dr. Harper leaned in, eyes narrowing, jaw tightening. The moment the cages appeared, her mouth went flat anger, compressed into control. "You went there," she said, not as a scold, but as a fact she now had to carry too. "Honey took me," Eli replied, His voice broke on her name. Like she knew. Dr. Harper exhaled slowly. She did know. She paused the video on the plate, wrote it down twice. Careful. Then she looked at Eli the way a vet looks at someone who's about to make a difficult choice. Assessing resolve, not comfort. If we go straight to the sheriff, she said, and the sheriff's tied to this. She didn't finish. In a town this small, loyalty and corruption sometimes wore the same face. Eli's stomach twisted. Then what? Then we make it too public to bury, she said. Dr. Harper's clinic wasn't just an exam room. It was a bulletin board of the town's conscience. Missing pets, rescue fundraisers, photos of dogs recovered after hurricanes. If she decided something mattered, it mattered to people who otherwise stayed quiet. She grabbed her keys. Bring the phone. Keep the dogs here. I'm calling someone I trust. They met at the clinic an hour later. The building sat near the highway, a squat brick rectangle with a bright sign that cut through the gray morning. Dr. Harper unlocked the door and led Eli into her office, where the smell of disinfectant mixed with old coffee. Waiting inside was a man Eli didn't recognize. Early 30s, tall, lean, with warm brown skin and a trimmed mustache that made him look older than his age. He wore a weathered jacket and held a notepad like it was an extension of his hand. His eyes were tired but direct, the eyes of someone who listened for a living. "This is Jordan Lee," Dr. Harper said. "He runs the Bayou Bend Gazette. He doesn't scare easily." Jordan stood and offered Eli a firm handshake. His grip was steady, his expression serious, without being theatrical. "Dr. Harper says you've got something," he said. Eli showed the video. Jordan watched without interrupting. When the cages appeared, his brows drew together. When the plate flashed, he leaned forward, rewound, and watched again. "That's enough to start asking questions," Jordan said quietly. He looked at Eli, voice low. "You sure you want your name attached?" Eli thought of the blocked call, Derek's promise, the truck's lights cutting through rain. He imagined Clover's fever returning, Nugget's shivers, Honey's eyes when she'd been trapped. "No," Eli said, "but I'm more sure I don't want this to keep happening." Jordan nodded like he'd been waiting for that sentence. "Then we do this smart," he said. "We share what we can without handing them your address." Dr. Harper crossed her arms. "And we call the state animal cruelty hotline," she added, "not just local." The next hours moved like a chain reaction. Jordan wrote fast, checking details, calling sources. Dr. Harper pulled medical notes, photos of Honey's underweight frame, the pup's hypothermia, Clover's infection. Evidence that didn't care who people believed. By afternoon, the story was out. Not in a dramatic headline, but in plain words that made readers feel implicated. A mother dog and puppies found zip-tied in a cooler. Warehouse activity in the storm. Cages, a license plate. The post spread through Bayou Bend the way fire spreads through dry grass. Comments multiplied. People who doubted Eli yesterday began tagging agencies, demanding action. Marlene Doss shared it with a caption that read, "If you're quiet about cruelty, you're on its side." Tyler Ruiz reposted it with shaking hands and a single line, "Please help them." Pressure does something powerful in America. It forces systems to move, not because they suddenly grow a conscience, but because they fear being watched. 2 days later, because investigations still take breath and paperwork state officers arrived with marked vehicles, and the county had no choice but to cooperate. Jordan called Eli from the clinic parking lot, voice tight with adrenaline. "They're at the warehouse," he said. It's happening. Eli didn't go. Dr. Harper wouldn't let him. Not because he was weak, but because he was a witness who needed to stay alive. He stayed at the clinic instead, sitting on a plastic chair, staring at his hands. He tried to picture the cages opening, the animals blinking into daylight. He tried not to picture what they might find. When Dr. Harper finally got the call, she listened without speaking, then closed her eyes like someone letting go of a held breath. "They found it," she said to Eli. "All of it. A backyard breeding operation, unlicensed, hidden. Records half burned. Dogs kept in cramped crates. Females pushed through litter after litter until they collapsed. And a practice that made Eli feel sick, even to hear. The unsellables disposed of quietly, dumped into the river in sealed coolers on storm nights when nobody looked." Derek Harlan's name surfaced fast. Jordan dug through property links and found the paper trail wasn't as clean as Derek's truck. When a county officer tried to present Derek as a concerned owner, Dr. Harper's clinic files and the river evidence did what truth always does when it has enough witnesses. It refused to fold. Derek didn't have microchips, didn't have vet records, didn't have legal ownership, only entitlement. Dogs were seized. Rescues from nearby counties were called in. The warehouse became a scene no one in Bayou Bend could pretend they hadn't known about. And back at Eli's cabin, something changed too. Clover's fever broke for good. Her breathing smoothed. Nugget began to wobble on his legs with the clumsy optimism of a puppy who believes life can be kind. Honey slept for the first time without her head lifted toward the door, her body still curled around her babies, but not braced for impact. A week later, Eli stood in Dr. Harper's clinic with paperwork in his hand. The form was simple, black ink on white. But his signature felt like a bridge between who he had been alone, cautious, always holding back, and who the river had forced him to become. He wrote his name. When he looked down, Honey was watching him. Her eyes weren't panicked now. They were steady. Clover and Nugget pressed against her, warm and real. Eli bent, resting his forehead against Honey's damp fur, and for the first time in years, he felt something unclench inside his chest. Not victory, not relief, home. Sometimes miracles don't fall from the sky. They float in on a cold river, wrapped in fear and barely breathing hope. That night wasn't luck. It felt like a whisper from God saying, "Look again, don't turn away." Because in everyday life, the world gives us 1,000 reasons to stay busy, to stay quiet, to keep driving. But God places small tests in our path. One choice, one moment, one open heart, and that's where grace shows up. If this story moved you, let it move your hands too. Share it so more people remember compassion still matters. Comment where you're watching from and tell us, have you ever witnessed a miracle, big or small, in your own life? And if you want more stories like this, subscribe to the channel and stay with us. May God bless you, protect your family, and guide you with courage and kindness today, tomorrow, and through every storm you can't see yet.